This is a girls' school where there are 5 girls serving as disciplinary guardians, and they gathered to figure out how to deal with Nomura. When he first transferred to this school, all the students were armed, because he had been expelled from his previous school for causing chaos, and injuring 40 people with his bare hands. Meanwhile, Nomura was confronting a chubby boy, showing no politeness and bluntly calling him fat like a pig. However, Kusuo didn't scold him but wanted to remind Nomura about the unwritten rules here for a peaceful life. Nomura feared no one, and wanted to find a girl wearing a mask in the school group, because she was the one who defeated him. At this moment, Rin also knew that Nomura had come here to find her, while Amu believed that Rin wouldn't be able to defeat Nomura. So Rin prepared herself to deal with this situation. As soon as Nomura entered the classroom, he was immediately confronted with a sword pointed at his face. She explained that she came here to discipline him, because he didn't understand his place here, and of course, he didn't understand, as he had just entered the school and saw boys wearing makeup and girls using swords. And there was even a rule that 5 swords governed this school. So, a girl explained to him that the 5 swords are the ones who maintain discipline at this place. Previously, it was an all-girls school, and it later became a co-ed school. The girls here used to be bullied by male students, which led to them being specially trained in swordsmanship. Gangs were also brought under control as a result, which is why Kusuo warned Nomura to check his arrogance. However, if they were to confront Nomura, he had the right to fight back. Currently, he was unarmed. So Rin asked Nomura what he wanted and was ready for a one-on-one duel. However, she thought Nomura was just a coward, and a waste of time coming here, so she gave him 2 options: cooperate or leave. Nomura refused to compromise and decided to have a little fun. He quickly moved behind the girl with pink hair, and then ran towards the window. Nomura planned to wait until the bell rang and then return. He had already assessed the situation, including the girl's uniform. Then, he swiftly jumped out of the classroom. Rin immediately pursued him, brandishing her sword for a showdown. She rushed forward aiming to cut off his tie, and luckily Nomura managed to evade the second attack. Rin sensed some potential in him, and decided to use her own skills, using her breath to enhance her physical abilities and avoid leaving openings. Hana was also watching the battle, and realized that Nomura wasn't an ordinary person. He kept avoiding Rin's attacks, but she still managed to land a blow that tore his shirt. Nomura understood that he couldn't underestimate his opponent anymore, so he took out a pair of gloves as a form of protection, making it easier to block incoming attacks. However, Hana questioned the purpose of those gloves, believing that Rin could cut through anything. Mary knew that the more Rin fought, the more determined her became, and if didn't win, Amu would laugh at her. Satori noticed that there were only 4 minutes left until the next class, and if the battle wasn't resolved by then, Nomura would be declared the winner. However, Nomura stumbled over a tree root, putting himself in a tight spot. His only option was to keep defending and wait for an opening. Rin noticed that Nomura seemed to lower his guard slightly, and thought he might be exposing a vulnerability, but to her surprise, Nomura sidestepped and managed to touch his opponent. He pushed the air from his body, directing it toward Rin, and held onto his sword to prevent her from striking. This was a flawed technique in swordsmanship called magic bullet that Nomura had used, and as previously mentioned by Amu, a girl rushed in and hit Nomura on the head, causing him to accidentally kiss Rin. She stood up, trembling, and vowed to seek revenge on him with her sword. That evening, Mary went to the bathhouse, and saw the girl who had hit Nomura on the head earlier. She was Rin's younger sister. Mary felt sorry for Rin, who had lost the fight to Nomura and been forcibly kissed, partly due to Nano's interference. At that moment, Nomura invited Kusuo to join him for a bath. Nomura had only injured his leg from tripping over a tree root, and wanted to ask Kusuo if there was a way to get permission to leave, since it required the approval of all the 5 swords members, so he needed to please them. Kusuo instructed him on how to make purchases within the school. Simply write it down, and someone would deliver the items at the end of the day. However, miscellaneous items were sold underground, but they tended to be a bit expensive. And Nomura wanted his friend to buy him a box of cakes. The next morning, Nomura brought the box of cakes to class, and everyone had to be cautious, because an opening would lead to him kissing them, but that wasn't his main concern. He just wanted to see Rin. So, he inquired with her classmates, and learned that Rin was sick and couldn't come to class. Therefore, Nomura had to ask his roommate for directions to the women's dormitory. Kusuo knew that trouble was brewing again. Rin grew increasingly agitated when thinking about Nomura, because she had lost her first kiss to him, and even mentioning the kiss made her blush. Suddenly, she sensed danger. As Nomura entered through the window, and saw that she was perfectly healthy, he quickly checked her forehead to see if she had a fever, and ended up giving her the box of cakes as a gift. But when Rin removed her mask, she looked even cuter, which made her extremely shy. Rin wanted to know why Nomura had come here. and Nomura didn't hesitate to explain that he wanted permission to leave, and continued to shower Rin with compliments, causing her to turn red in embarrassment. So, she reluctantly handed him the permission card, and asked him to come back another time. However, Nomura didn't stop there. He wanted to kiss her again, causing Rin to faint. At that moment, Nono discovered a shocking scene, and quickly sounded the alarm. The traps were opened one after another in an attempt to restrain Nomura. But he managed to escape. He encountered Choka, who thought he had terrible luck to meet her, and then Nono arrived. The two of them teamed up to punish Nomura, forcing him to put on his gloves and resolve the situation quickly. Nono used a baton from above, while the leg kicks from below. Additionally, Choka had a whip, making it difficult for Nomura to fight back. They revealed that they used to be a famous disciplinary duo in the school, and the only one who managed to escape their punishment was Amu. She had been at the school for a short while before him, but had gained the reputation of a female delinquent. The two girls wanted to strategize to corner Nomura, but he took advantage of their simultaneous charge and dodged, causing Choka's whip to get entangled with Nono, then delivered a strike that pushed Nono towards Choka, leaving both of them unable to move. Thinking she was about to be played with by Nomura just like Rin, Nono cried. Nomura wanted to teach them both that they should be polite when dealing with adults in the future, and Choka also cried, causing the other girls in the school to insult him as a brute. Nomura, not understanding what had just happened, when he was the one who was harmed in this situation, Satori observed from the rooftop, and knew that Nomura had inadvertently touched Choka, and Mary would be the next one. That afternoon, Rin brought a stamp for Nomura, and he expressed his desire for her to recover quickly, because school was boring without her. But when Rin learned about the events of the day, and felt regretful when she handed him the stamp, the next morning, Nomura encountered Rin, and the other girls were too afraid to approach him. Even someone as troublesome as Kusuo avoided him. Rin declared that she would be the one to monitor Nomura from now on. Rin clarified the story to Nono, instead of having to listen to distorted stories from others. Mary heard that Rin was taking responsibility for monitoring Nomura, but she disagreed because he was her prey. At this point, Nomura was sitting and reading a dark magazine. Kusuo warned him that if he had touched Choka, Mary would surely target him. Nomura was wondering which girl could escape being disciplined. Kusuo then informed him that it was the girl known as the Queen, who had defeated Rin and Mary without a scratch. This made Nomura realize that it wasn't Rin who had defeated him, but someone else who had transferred to the school before him. The next morning, Rin came to get Nomura for school, as she was going to monitor him everywhere. However, as soon as he descended, he thought she was still upset about the previous incident. Rin quickly checked his school bag before allowing him to go with her. Nomura didn't like the idea of being monitored as it left him with no freedom. Right at that moment, Mary and Choka approached. Mary had heard rumors that Nomura had assaulted Rin and her two younger sisters, so she wanted to punish him today. However, Nomura had no idea what evil rumors were circulating, as everything had been a misunderstanding, and with Rin watching over him now, such incidents would not happen again. Mary got frustrated and forgot Japanese, speaking in Italian instead. She felt that Rin had been acting strange since Nomura accidentally kissed her, and Rin seemed helpless as well. So, she told Nomura to go first, because it was a matter for girls to deal with, when both girls considered Nomura as their prey. No one was willing to back down, so they drew their swords to talk. Mary asked Choka to handle Nomura, who was continuously being whipped as he went up to school. However, Nomura had prepared a whip to defend himself. Suddenly, Choka frothed at the mouth and fainted, and Nomura realized that his pants had fallen down due to Rin's earlier urging, which he hadn't properly prepared for. Then he spotted his old enemy. Nomura remembered that Amu was the one who had defeated him before, and asked him to be her subordinate. Back then, Nomura had thought Amu was a guy, so now he wanted to clarify the situation. However, Amu revealed that she was indeed a full-fledged girl, but Nomura wanted to check for himself, but Mary rushed over and was shocked to see him exposed. Choka appeared to be in psychological shock, and when Nomura turned around, Amu had disappeared, but the lingering aura was still there. Amu remembered their previous encounter. At that time Nomura was very strong and she still wanted him as her subordinate. However, he had refused, so she let him taste her secret technique. Now, she was determined to deal with him the next time they met. Nomura had been severely beaten and stabbed in the hand, because his gloves only protected against slashes not stabs, when he still didn't fully understand Western swordsmanship. But the girl Naba was spying from a distance, and explained that Mary's sword technique was essentially similar to Japanese swordsmanship, and the main difference being in the knee and hip movements. Nomura continued to face disadvantages and was struck by Mary's attacks. The longer the battle dragged on, the more he found himself losing ground. If he attempted to end the battle quickly, Mary would likely be defeated. Rin arrived on the scene and only found Choka lying in one spot. When she asked Choka about Nomura's whereabouts, Choka's response was unintelligible. So Rin had to choose her own path. Nomura decided to take a risky move, and rushed in to assassinate his opponent. Fortunately, he used the magazine to block one of Mary's strikes, then hit her on the head with it, and hit her with a magic bullet attack. Mary admitted defeat and believed Nomura was about to do something to her. However, he didn't pay her any attention. Instead, he was only concerned about the magazine, making Mary think he was criticizing her for not being as beautiful as Rin, and wanting to play around with her two younger sisters. But when it came to her, he didn't want to do anything, so Mary wanted him to tease her. But Nomura didn't want to do that yet, as he only wanted to get stamped to move freely in the school. So Mary had to put the stamp on her chest and dared him to touch it. At that moment, Rin noticed what was happening, as Nomura had been engaging in inappropriate behavior. When they were only a short distance apart, Mary explained the situation, and she will give him the stamp, but in return she will also be responsible for supervising Nomura, causing the two girls to have heated arguments. Even though both Rin and Mary were following Nomura to supervise him everywhere, not arguing was unbearable for them. They both seemed to have free time, and the Five Swords group didn't have much to do either. So, Nomura had to remind them both to stand firm. At that moment, Hannah, a member of the Five Swords, returned from Hawaii with her pet bear, and saw Rin and Mary chasing Nomura on the rooftop. She didn't expect that while she was traveling, other members had become friends with the new guy. She decided to add Rin and Mary to the list of those who needed discipline. The next morning, Nomura found Kusuo hanging from the flagpole. When he was about to rescue his friend, the two girls suspected it was a trap. Hannah appeared and saw Nomura as the one who disrupted the school's discipline, and bothered many other female students. She decided to take matters into her own hands, and announced a combat sports event, and Nomura as the main participant. If he won, Kusuo would be released, and his charges for violating the school rules would be dropped, and Nomura would also receive a stamp of her. Nomura had no choice but to accept without hesitation. Rin and Mary were curious about Hannah's intentions, as she hadn't obtained their consent, and somehow made all the nearby students disappear. 3 members of Hannah's bodyguard squad also appeared, and both girls were forced to participate in the event, leading to continued arguments between them. Hannah didn't want to waste any time and initiated the first game. Rin wanted Nomura to win from the beginning, because it would get harder as later on. Hannah had previously organized a game of barrel racing for those undergoing discipline, where the disciplined individuals had to carry a burning barrel on their backs, while others poured gasoline into it. The result was that the school had caught fire. However, this time, they were given sumo belts. Nomura realized he had to take off his pants to put on the belt, but he didn't expect that it could be worn on the outside. When Nono and Choka arrived, 3 members of the bodyguard squad blocked them. Rin insisted that they would stop if the 2 girls are attacked. However, the 2 girls didn't know how to tie the sumo belts, so they led Nomura to a corner to ask for his help. Rin was the first to try, and the belt moved from one side to another, leaving her screaming and unable to stand. Mary also started to get scared and wanted Rin to tie the belt for her, but Rin had forgotten how to do it and wanted Mary to experience the feeling. Hannah had someone filming and broadcasting it to the entire school. Upon realizing that they were being secretly filmed, they were extremely shocked and alarmed. Nomura went to the first arena and wanted to see who his opponent was. Hannah informed him that his opponent was already in the arena. A bear jumped down from the roof, leaving Nomura screaming. Hannah mentioned that the bear was well behaved but slightly aggressive, and if they could defeat it, all 3 of them would be spared. So, Nomura accepted the challenge. Knowing he had never lost to anyone before, both sides charged at each other, and Nomura used his magic bullet technique, but it wasn't enough. He had to stomp his foot to push the bear closer to the edge of the ring. Nomura stepped behind to lift it up. As he had grown accustomed to wrestling with adults since childhood, he had managed to lift the bear, but the 2 girls advised against it, fearing that it would crush him. Nomura was furious when Hannah dragged the bystander into this game. But what was even worse was tarnishing his 2 girls' reputation, so, don't expect him to stay silent about it. However, after holding the bear for a while, he noticed that the sumo belt of the bear had slipped off because it wasn't tied tightly. Nomura claimed victory since the bear had broken the rules of the game. Hannah couldn't believe the bear cub had lost and she fell backwards. She immediately prepared for another match, and would fight this one herself, causing everyone to flee in an instant, leaving no one on the field. Hannah called Nomura to the rooftop to meet her, but to get there, he had to pass through 3 floors, each guarded by sentinels. However, the 2 girls had already dealt with the 2 cameramen, reducing the number of guards, and they believed Nomura didn't need to participate anymore, since he had already won the previous round with the bear. But he insisted on participating to save Kusuo and get the stamp back, so the two girls returned his jacket, and still wanted to go with him to carry out her monitoring mission. Nomura reminded them to change their pants if they had time, but after waiting for a while and not seeing them come out, he stormed in and was immediately attacked. Their two younger siblings slapped him on the face. Then, both of them volunteered to be pathfinders. As soon as they entered, they rushed in to help Nomura deal with the guards. But Rin and Mary were taken aback when Nomura didn't join them inside, but instead stood outside here. He was going to confront the ringleader first, and if that door opened they could take a shortcut. Suddenly, the door was broken by Satori, who only did what she wanted with no intention of helping Nomura. So, Nomura went up to the rooftop. Not knowing who the people releasing Kusuo were, his main goal was still to defeat Hana, and she believed Rin and Mary had been charmed by Nomura, as they were helping a new student at the school. So Hana called her bear to prepare for an attack, and Mary had to go down to deal with the three guards, while Rin claimed she only knew how to hide behind the bear and not fight on her own. But Nomura took the initiative to fight the bear, because he had learned some tricks to battle it. When the bear attacked, he just had to duck. However, in actual combat, the bear's hand punched him in the face, leaving Nomura surprised that the bear knew martial arts. It launched a continuous series of attacks, forcing Nomura to dodge constantly. Rin rushed to Hana, but she dodged and delivered a strike to her shoulder. Hana claimed she was no weaker than her bear, as she threw a shuriken at that moment, and spun around to put on a show in front of her opponent. The two girls continued to exchange moves. Just when Hana thought she had struck true, Rin lifted her leg to dodge and kicked back at her opponent. Meanwhile, Nomura continued to be relentlessly attacked by the bear, and tried hitting it with the magic bullet, but with no success, and found himself cornered. On the other hand, Mary was dealing with the three weaklings, and took them down with just one strike. On the rooftop, Hana informed Rin that Nomura was in trouble, causing Rin to lose focus on her opponent. However, Nomura reassured her and telling that he was fine, and encouraged her to concentrate on winning. Hana then commanded her bear to attack directly, but it hesitated because of Nomura's magic bullet threat. When it moved to strike, he feigned using the magic bullet, causing it to expose its face, and he landed a punch. Meanwhile, Rin charged at Hana with a sword, giving Hana the upper hand initially, but Rin overcame her fear and turned the tide. At that moment, their two younger siblings arrived, and Nomura thanked them all for their help. He asked them to assist him in tying up Hana with the sumo belt, but when Rin and Mary thought about the scene, they immediately chased after Nomura for a showdown. The next day, Rin examined her new mask, and thought about Nomura praising her beauty when she took off the mask. She asked her younger sister about it, and Nono still wanted Rin to wear it over one eye, so Rin chose to keep it that way. Mary also asked her younger sister how this perfume smelled, and her sister liked it, so Mary wanted Nomura to also smell its fragrance. But as soon as they arrived at school, Rin and Mary noticed that Nomura was getting attention from younger siblings, because he had defeated the bear. They saw him as quite the catch. Inside the classroom, everyone turned to look at him instead of the blackboard. Nomura had just yawned a bit when Rin kicked him, and the girls hanging around outside the classroom were chased away by Mary. During break time, a crowd followed him wherever he went, with girls flocking to him, which annoyed both Rin and Mary. They sensed someone else was also watching Nomura, so they stuck close to him like shadows, making them both furious. Nomura didn't want this kind of fame, and asked them not to look at him, which resulted in both girls punching him without understanding why. When they left school, they noticed that Nomura didn't pay any attention to them, which left the two girls feeling downcast. It turned out that Hana had been secretly observing them, and she realized that Nomura was not an ordinary person, as he had transformed the two people who used to prioritize discipline turned into this. That evening, both girls were angry with Nomura, and decided that they needed to set things straight with him, causing the poor boy to cry out. Kusuo recognized their problem and invited Nomura to sleep over, but that night, someone sneaked into his room. The next morning started like any other day for the two girls, but today Nomura seemed to pay more attention to them. Despite this, Rin and Mary didn't let the body search incident slide. However, they were shocked when Rin found a picture in his bag, which made them furious. When Nomura had been making advances towards Satori, so they were determined not to overlook this matter. Nomura had to run to school to escape their wrath, but he ran into the bear. He begged Hana to hide him from Rin and Mary, and surprisingly, the bear also liked him, as it was female. When Hana inquired about the situation, she burst into laughter at the girls' foolishness. She knew that Satori was dividing them to make it easier to handle Nomura. Nomura will try to prove his innocence, and point out the evidence in the picture, when his little guy wasn't standing up, so it could have been staged. He decided to break into the girls' dormitory, but Hana informed him that security had been tightened since his previous intrusion. Nomura devised his own plan. When he allowed himself to be captured by Rin and Mary, They beat him until his back was covered in scars, at which point they stopped. Hana then arrived and released him, because the two had planned that, if he couldn't infiltrate successfully, he would pretend to get caught. However, Nomura had his own reasons to prove his innocence, so Hana decided to accompany him, because she was worried her bear would be sad if something happened to him. Satori was not in the room at this time, so he could potentially search for the photo. However, despite searching throughout the whole session, they couldn't find it anywhere. Nomura suspected that the masked individuals from earlier might be holding onto it, and Hana suggested meeting Satori in person to get the full story. While on their way, Nomura accidentally triggered a trap, causing the two guards to approach. Hana had to hide him behind the bear, but for some reason, the bear blushed, and Nomura realized he might have touched a sensitive area. The bear couldn't take it anymore and fell over, so Hana quickly sat on top of to conceal him. The two girls saw a baby bear. Realizing it was the baby of the female bear, Nomura was surprised that the bear already had a husband. However, the bear triggered another trap, and Nomura had to fly out to replace him. Both searched Satori's bathroom but found nothing. Suddenly, a masked girl appeared. She was Satori's right-hand person and used a blowgun. Hana swiftly defended Nomura. At this point Satori emerged, looking more like a creature wearing a human disguise than a real human. The masked girl fired another blowgun dart, but it didn't hit Nomura as easily as before, as he had felt someone watching him all day, and it turned out to be her. Moreover, they dragged Kusuo into this matter. But Satori explained that the little one volunteered to help her and no one forced. When they took photos of Nomura the previous night, Satori had put something in his mouth, causing him to continue sleeping. Meanwhile, Mary and Rin were drinking alcohol, and were upset at the thought of Nomura deceiving them. Rin was particularly furious, thinking that she couldn't compare to Satori in any way. Little did she know that Nomura was trying to prove his innocence, but upon seeing Satori, all his purity vanished, causing him to become distracted. However, Hana managed to wake him up by throwing him inside. Unfortunately, she was also affected by the sleeping dart from the blowgun earlier, so she had to harm herself to regain her alertness. Nomura was still trying to figure out how to fight back against Satori. She unexpectedly punched him and sent him flying. He managed to block her attacks, but she continued to assault him relentlessly. Satori was indeed an enigmatic person, and her face remained emotionless even when someone saw everything about her, leading everyone to call her a monster. After receiving 3 sword strikes, Nomura finally recognized her fighting style, but she immediately changed her approach, making it even more challenging for him. Hana was also struggling as the blowgun contained poison, and being in close combat with it was dangerous. She decided to cut herself on her hand to stay alert. Meanwhile, Nomura had figured out Satori's martial arts style, which encompassed 10 different sword techniques. She acknowledged that he guessed correctly, but blocking her attacks was another matter. So, he devised a plan to defeat her and removed his clothes, causing Satori to reveal her emotions as she tried to focus on a point. Even when she rolled her eyes, it was futile as Nomura had grasped her sword techniques. Hana managed to turn the situation in her favor with a swift leg sweep, countering her opponent's attacks and causing the masked girl to fall. Hana was determined to uncover the identity of the masked person. Satori threatened to toss the data inside into the water, but Nomura wasn't afraid. He removed his gloves and punched her into the water, believing she deserved it for making his 2 girls cry. But Nomura couldn't be so heartless, so he reached out and pulled Satori up. In an instant, he fell into a state of unconsciousness, as the bear continuously licked him without stopping, and Satori wanted him to recover quickly and return home. Despite this, Nomura still remembered his teammate Hana. When she was enjoying a peaceful sleep, and he wondered why he was unconscious here. When Nomura had just pulled Satori up and was pulled down by her, when someone walks into their bathroom, Hana wanted to see who the masked person was, but opponent stopped her, and Naba was there as well to witness the situation. They resolved everything outside, and Naba went inside to meet Satori. Knowing that Nomura was here, however, Satori continued to hide the truth, and when Naba left, she reminded him to meet her at the dormitory. After Naba left, Nomura wanted to go meet her because he couldn't refuse a girl's invitation. However, Satori warned him that Naba was the strongest among the 5 swords, and advised him not to go. At that moment, Nomura collapsed because he had endured torture and fights that night, reaching his limit and fainting. Meanwhile, Rin was counting sheep to fall asleep but kept seeing Nomura's face. She decided to go to the torture room to meet him, but as she stepped out, she encountered Mary. Both of them hid their intentions to meet Nomura, but they ended up sitting down for tea, and thinking of ways to send the other back to their room. Unfortunately, their 2 younger sisters arrived, and both pairs decided to see who could drink tea the longest. The first to give in would be taken back to their room. Suddenly, Satori arrived and informed them that Nomura was in the medical room, because he had attacked her in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Nomura suddenly realized that he had forgotten something, and it turned out he had forgotten to meet Naba. When she was scolded by the maid, for standing outside the dormitory in the freezing cold of the night, Nomura asked Satori if she was injured. She mentioned a slight ringing in her ear from his earlier slap. She also informed him that she had explained the situation to Mary and Rin regarding his attack in the bathroom. Rin arrived with a furious expression, but she bowed and apologized because Satori had explained everything. Rin continued to blush when she saw Nomura's big worm, and both of them sat down to talk. Rin wanted to apologize to him for the torture, and Nomura wasn't angry at her, but Rin still wanted to make amends, and Nomura told her to close her eyes. Rin thought he was about to kiss her, but instead Nomura removed her mask, causing her extreme embarrassment. When Nomura asked why Rin always wore a mask, she explained that her father had been unfaithful, leaving her and mother behind. The mother looked at her child's face and remembered the father, causing her heartache. So Rin wore a mask to make the mother feel more comfortable. She allowed Nomura to remove the mask, because he was the first person to accept her true self. Nomura returned the mask to her and said he would wait for the day when Rin decided to take it off herself. Nomura couldn't fully understand the emotions Rin had, as he had grown up as an orphan and had been trained solely in martial arts. Nonetheless, he didn't regret his path, and he appreciated everything that had led him to this point. Hannah was lying nearby and listening to the conversation, but she really had to use the restroom, and it was becoming unbearable, just as Mary approached and apologized to Nomura, offering to let him do anything he wanted with her, but Nomura was too exhausted and returned to his room. Kusuo was prepared to hear him complain if he wanted to, but Nomura didn't blame Kusuo. He understood that Kusuo had intervened to protect the male dormitory. Kusuo also realized that his actions were not entirely right, so he went to help Nomura get the fourth stamp, allowing Nomura to sleep peacefully. And knowing that this school was full of interesting people, the next day, someone discovered that Amu's room was completely empty. A few male students taking a bath suddenly felt threatened by someone, and sought Nomura's help. Though he was scared, Nomura wanted to sleep more, but Rin came to get him, and he had no choice but to go. Kusuo gave him card. When the male students saw that Nomura had collected 4 stamps, they felt jealous, but obtaining Naba's stamp was the most challenging. Naba had informed the school about Amu's actions, which led to the school announcing a day off. Meanwhile, Nomura went to meet Rin and wondered where Mary was. Rin explained that Mary was searching for the baby bear that belonged to the mother bear, and Hannah didn't want this to become a big issue. She mentioned that if Satori found out, she would pamper the little bear cub until the end of its days. Therefore, they were determined to find it before Satori did. Mary ran to meet Nomura and Rin, asking for their help in finding Choka's wig, because Choka couldn't leave her room without it. This surprised both Nomura and Rin, because they had believed the wig was her real hair all this time. Later, Mary happened to see Hannah's group also searching for something, but she misheard and thought they were looking for the same thing. They all regrouped, and Mary thanked Hannah for helping search. However, when they explained what they were searching for, they realized that they were looking for different things. While they were arguing, Nomura suddenly remembered something. Earlier that morning, some male students had mentioned that someone was spying on them, so he returned to the shower area and caught the culprit, who turned out to be the bear wearing Choka's wig. They went to find Choka, who was now wearing a different wig, and returned her original one. Mary also informed Rin that school was cancelled for the day, due to Amu's sudden disappearance. Hannah's group felt lucky for finding the baby bear before Satori. In the meantime, Satori called the masked girl to the rooftop, and it seemed like she was hiding a secret from everyone. This secret was somehow related to the masked girl. Amu arrived and appeared to know this secret as well, as she had a picture of Satori. However, Satori was not afraid, and Hannah noticed Amu and Satori on the rooftop and quickly headed there. Meanwhile, Satori decided to confront Amu, but as she approached, Amu struck her with a blow to the abdomen. Amu was determined to take everything from Satori, but the masked girl threw a throwing darts at opponent, but Amu managed to block. Satori used this opportunity to launch an attack, but it wasn't very effective. Satori realized that she was completely outmatched, but Amu showed no mercy. The masked girl stepped in to defend Satori, and Amu soon realized that they were sisters due to their similar blood. Amu decided to defeat both of them. As Hannah rushed to the scene, she realized it was too late. At the same time, Amu didn't need to search anymore. Hannah and the baby bear teamed up to attack Amu, but as they approached, both were hit by Amu's attacks. Although they hit Amu, it only tore clothes and she remained unharmed. Nomura encountered Naba nearby, and Kusuo informed him that Naba was the strongest of the 5 swords, causing fear in everyone. Nomura attempted to obtain Naba's stamp, but he was immediately held at sword point, leaving him stunned. Naba explained that Nomura was only allowed to violate the rule twice, and going into the girls' dorm twice counted as 2 violations. However, Nomura quickly analyzed his opponent. He noticed that Naba's sword techniques were extremely fast, and Naba realized that Nomura had potential and excellent swordsmanship skills. She recognized that he lacked a proper mentor and training partner, as she observed his precise understanding of an opponent's attack range in combat. Hana's bear rushed into the battle but was struck down by Amu's attack, and lying on the ground injured. The backup team arrived to assist, but the situation didn't look good. Nomura heard the commotion on the rooftop, but Naba was still explaining his technique, magic bullet, and she acknowledged Nomura as her disciple. However, Nomura became aware that something important was happening on the rooftop. Naba explained that it was Amu, and that she was the one who informed them about Nomura's technique. Amu hadn't been friendly with anyone when she first arrived, but when Nomura came, she seemed to enjoy talking about him, even though they weren't exactly friends. While Naba was speaking, Nomura suddenly ran away, infuriating Naba. Meanwhile, Hana pleaded with Amu to spare them, but Amu attacked, causing Hana to lose her eyesight. Nomura rushed to the scene, and found everyone lying on the ground. He assessed the injuries, and it appeared that Hana was the most severely injured. He vowed to make Amu pay, but discovered that she had gone down to look for Naba. Leaving everything behind, Rin's group arrived to stop Amu. Then Amu would make them feel what it's like to be defeated. Nomura noticed someone approaching, and said that Hana was only injured in the eyelid, and her eyeball was still safe. This person wanted Nomura to go down there to deal with Amu, while the 2 girls rushed in to attack, but still couldn't do anything to the opponent. Amu aimed 2 younger siblings, but Naba intervened. She understood Amu's karate technique, and how it turned her body into a formidable weapon. However, she believed despite incredible strength, but hand-to-hand combat against a sword was still a vulnerability. Both sides had lightning-fast speed, so they wanted to see who would come out on top. Naba rushed forward and unleashed 3 slashing attacks, but in the end, she was the one hit. Her sword broke, and Amu could have easily snapped it like a piece of cake. Naba planned to continue the fight, but Nomura pushed her away and faced Amu himself. This forced Amu to use all her strength. Before, Nomura had approached Amu and befriended her. Mistakenly thinking she was a boy, he had embraced and tried to kiss her, which infuriated Amu. However, they found it interesting and decided to become friends. But Nomura was really terrible when he left her alone to hang out with another girl, which made Amu furious and punched the other person unconscious. This incident also made Nomura extremely angry, but he was counter-attacked. Luckily a magazine came to his aid during the attack. Naba couldn't understand why Nomura had changed his mind, and thought he wanted to be friends with her too. But for Amu, Nomura didn't like her hurting his friends. This made Amu want him dead. So Nomura had to find a way to fight Amu. If he failed, then everyone around would be in danger. Rin tried to encourage Nomura, and noticed that Naba's attack had left a scar on Amu. After some analysis, they realized that Nomura's magic bullet caused damage to his opponents. Amu prepared to defend against his attack, and when Nomura lunged forward, she managed to dodge his initial attack. When she was about to counter, Nomura's clothes fell off, so she threw them back to him. Naba told Nomura that he needed to get rid of his fear, and fight with determination. He decided to fight with the goal of protecting everyone. Amu couldn't understand why he was on a different side than hers, when she had always been bored with this world, until he appeared. He was like a shining star in her life, and she desperately wanted him by her side. And whether throwing away her pride would win him over or not, she decided that if she couldn't have him, then nobody else could. Nomura charged forward, ignoring 2 of Amu's attacks, and unleashed his magic bullet, pushing her back. Despite taking a direct hit in the attack, Amu was still able to punch his opponent in the face. Both of them engaged in a brawl like 2 men, exchanging blows with apparent enjoyment. In the end, they both chose to conclude the fight with their unique techniques, and Amu held back, wanting Nomura to deliver the final blow and win, as they would have more fights in the future. However, Nomura didn't want to force anyone, so Amu voluntarily surrendered. As the fight ended, Naba pointed her sword at Nomura, and offering 2 options: either she would deal with him or he would accept her as a mentor, with the reward being the final stamp Nomura needed. At that moment, the principal arrived and ordered everyone to disperse, and granting Nomura an early graduation as per the regulations. Kusuo felt sorry for Nomura when he got expelled, but he also felt that it wasn't such a big deal, because no one would be monitoring him in his future life. Later, Nomura visited everyone, and Satori is no exception. They will play together whenever they have free time. Meanwhile, Rin and Mary appealed to the principal to reconsider keeping Nomura in school, but the decision couldn't be reversed, so he had to leave. At this moment, Nomura encountered Naba. She informed him that Amu had also left, and was probably at the airport. Naba handed over the stamp, prompting Nomura to rush to find Amu. He wanted to invite her somewhere now that he had the freedom to do so. However, Amu remained silent and instead gave Nomura a kiss, expressing her desire to send a message to others, as Nomura now belonged to her alone. Upon returning home, Nomura ran into Rin and Mary again, and they wanted to inform him that the expulsion was still in effect. However, they were given permission by the principal to monitor him, so Rin asked if he wanted to be monitored or drop out, and Nomura decided to return to school with everyone. Thank you all for your attention and support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next videos.